Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, AirspeedPrime here with my next Avatar video. This one is going to be the answers and results to the first edition of Airspeed's Avatar Trivia Challenge. So you guys have had a week to send me in your answers, and now it is results time. But before we get to the results and who won, let's go through all of the answers in detail, because in the first video where I obviously gave you guys the questions, I talked in the first part of that video about how I ultimately wanted this to sort of be in a way a learning experience, where even if you got a lot of the questions wrong, from getting the answers you would learn more. You would learn about maybe parts of the Avatar universe you don't know about and so on. So we're going to go through these answers in a lot of depth, where there is depth to the question, and discuss what was answers, what wasn't valid answers, and so on. Then we'll get into the actual results, who scored what, who won this first trivia. So let's just jump straight into it. So question 1 was, what is the name of the little girl's doll from the episode Jet, which is obviously episode 10 of book 1. Pretty simple question. The answer is Mrs. Pretty. This is just said in dialogue right at the end of the episode, and then you can see the picture there that is the doll that is being referred to. Pretty simple one. It's just a minor little piece of dialogue information at the end of one of the episodes. I think everyone got that one correct. Question 2. Name 10 last names in the Avatar universe. And I also said fake names do not count, like Wang Fire. And this was definitely, going in, I thought this would be the big one that really a lot of people struggled on. And a few people did, but for the most part, I was very surprised a little bit to see just how well most people did on this. The amount of people who got full marks on this question was really, really good. So let's get into the answers here. And for me, this is the best list I could come up with. I had most of these. I think an answer from 1 or 2 people gave me ones that even I'd kind of forgotten about. But to me, this is the list that I could come up with. I did extra research to try and find other ones. There probably still is other ones out there, but to me, these were all of the valid answers I could find. Beifong, Sato, Moon, Varric, Raiko, Morishita, Coom, Tim, Cho, Shinobi Ganlan, Pang, Yumsun Han, and Omo. So I'll go into depth here to explain some of these ones and where they come from. So Beifong, Sato are very simple. I think everyone got both of them. Toph Beifong is the Beifong family. Asami and Hiroshi Sato, simple enough. Julie is a main enough character by the end of the show. At the wedding we find out that her name is Moon. That's simple. Varric, obviously, at the same wedding reveals that Varric basically is his last name, and it's like Icknick Blackstone. That's his first and middle name. With Varric, I didn't really care about which part of his name you really specified was his last name, because it's sort of unclear. Once you mentioned any part of his name, I gave you marks for that. And then Raiko, we know that Raiko is a last name because his wife, Buttercup, is specifically referred to at one point as Buttercup Raiko. Now, the other ones you may not know. So the first 5 I don't think need much more of an explanation than that. So let's go into the other ones. So Morishita is from the comic, specifically The Promise, the first Avatar comic. And you can see here I have the panel where she says her full name. My name is Kori Morishita, and she comes from the Morishita family, which is kind of like a mix of Fire Nation and Earth Kingdom. But the point here is that she has a second name. And just in case you're wondering about it, her father is specifically referred to previously in the comic as Mr. or Mayor Morishita, so that's what that is. Next up, Coom. Where does Coom come from? It's Wanyang Coom from Turf Wars, the first Korra comic, and again, here is the name here, and just for confirmation that it is a last name, his company is called Coom Enterprises or Coom Industries, so it is a second name. Tim is the playwright who wrote the Boy and the Iceberg play, and his name is mentioned in dialogue during the episode The Ember Island Players. You can see a picture of him there on the poster, and Tim more or less is considered to be a second name because his first name is kind of hyphenated, so the second part is fairly, it's clear enough that it is a second name. Chu or Cho comes from the Chu brothers and the elder Chu from the Fire Lion Turtle in Beginnings. They're obviously referred to all as the Chu brothers. As I said, their father is referred to as the Elder Chu, so it's the Chu family. It is a last name in the Avatar universe. Shinobi was fairly simple, I think, as well, but just in case, Shiro Shinobi, it's very clear cut. It's two names, and they're separate. And he's obviously the Probending announcer, and he's on the radio just a lot as well. Next up, Gonlon is Lao Gonlon, who's the owner of Cabbage Corp, and his name is said during dialogue in Korra when he is actually framed during the aftermath for what Hiroshi has actually done. So that's interesting. And then Omo also comes from Turf Wars, Jargala Omo, who is the leader of the Creeping Crystals Triad. And the reason her name is a second name is because she's specifically referred to by a bunch of other people throughout the comic as just Jargala, so the Omo is clearly a second name. Now, as for, very quickly actually, these ones as well. Pang and Yum-Soon Han are names mentioned by Toph during 214, The City of Walls and Secrets, while she is trying to get them into the party during that episode. She is from a noble family and would know other families, so I doubt she would make up names, especially when she is actually honestly trying to get them in. So that's why I consider them to be valid answers to this, in that if the Beifongs is like a noble family, these two are obviously noble families as well. And I think there's nothing that really points to them being made up, so I think that's why they're valid as well. Now, as for other answers to this question, I think the only other real ones that I saw people mention were basically just any character that had like a name that featured two parts to it. So a lot of people were saying like, oh, what about Xin Fu, like Tai Li, Lin Yi, Jingling from the comics, all those type of ones. And to me, it was just a case of, because a lot of the names are Asian inspired, some of those are just first names, and in a lot of those cases, either we know from the dialogue of like characters always being referred to by both parts of their name that it's clearly their common first name, and they're not always being referred to by first and last name, in the way that like Toph isn't always called Toph Beifong, it's Toph, and then occasionally she was referred to as Toph Beifong in more formal settings, in the same way that like Ty Lee is always called Ty Lee. She's never referred to as Tai and stuff like that, so it's not a secondary name. Now, some people brought up the fact that, but like all of her sisters, or identical sisters, all have Tai something. And that is just to add to the whole idea of them not feeling overly separate, because they all have very similar names, but it's just a naming convention. It's not actually like a second name or a first name just reversed or anything like that. So stuff like that, like Master Yu, who goes with Zinfu, again, like there's nothing that really points to the fact that that's a secondary name. So you have to kind of add context to some of these ones as well. The only one where I would say is really up in the air is, I think one person gave the answer that was like Mr. Chung, which is from the first episode of Korra, and it's the Triads are obviously robbing from his store, and they call him Mr. Chung, and I think that's the only name he's ever referred to as. Now, is his name just Chung? That sort of fits, or is that a secondary name? We're not actually sure. I think I gave like half marks to it on that one, because I can't say either way in that case, because there's the Mr. bit in front of it. So just be aware of that. Otherwise, I think most people got most of the ones that I did point out, and a few people just couldn't remember all of the other ones. So that was one of the more complicated questions, but there I think that explains most of the answers. So next up, question 3. How many yuans does the team that wins the Probending Tournament receive? Show your workings. This one is fairly simple. I think basically everyone got this one. So each team has to provide 30,000 yuans for the championship pot. Butaka explains this to the Fire Ferrets. During the show, we directly see this happen. We also know that the tournament has 16 teams in it. The Fire Ferrets make it to the final, and the final is their 4th match that we directly see on screen in the episode. So tracking that back, 2, 4, 8, 16, it's a round of 16 tournament. This fact is also stated over the radio, so it's doubly confirmed to be 16. So then you just do some multiplication. 30,000 times 16 is 480,000 yuans, and that is the answer to that question. So the winner of the Probending Tournament wins 480,000 yuans, and that's that. So, yep. Next up, question 4. Name 3 spirits who chose to take a mortal form. And the answers to this question are, there's only 3 of them as far as I'm concerned, Tui, La, and Lady Tianhai. So Tui and La, obviously moon and ocean spirit, they are the koi fish. It's specifically stated in dialogue in the show. That's the whole point of, like, they find where the moon and ocean spirit are by directly being told this, that they took on a mortal form and passed over to the physical world right at the beginning. Now, I think a mistake that some people made with this question was thinking that this question directly meant any spirit who kind of passed over to the physical world. So Heibai would not be an answer because nothing is confirmed about Heibai that specifically states that his immortality as a spirit is different, that he made that sort of a decision. He still appears to be a completely normal spirit who is able to kind of take a lighter dark form, as we basically see. Similarly, Wan Shi Tong is also not an answer to this question because he just moved his library over. Obviously, he came with it. Same with the knowledge seekers within the library, but nothing is ever stated in dialogue in the show to confirm that Wan Shi Tong directly gave up his immortality as a spirit. He still appears to be just a giant spirit owl. There's no statement that, like, oh, we can kill him or anything like that. So to me, that's why that is not a valid answer to the question, and why the third answer is Lady Tianhai. Now, if you're not familiar with her, because I think a few people didn't get this as one of the answers, a lot of people did, which I was happy about, but you can see here's the explanation of this. Lady Tianhai from the Avatar comic, The Rift, which is the 3rd Avatar comic series. And here's basically the page where it's explained. She used to once every year, go to visit the city that she basically washed over as a spirit, and she chose to take on a human form. And eventually, she basically fell in love and decided to take on that human form permanently, even though she knew she would experience a human death. She got married to the king, basically, the prince became the king, and they lived happily, but she did die. Obviously, later on, it is explained that spirits, even when they take on a human form, never truly die. They just change form. But what the whole issue of this comic is that Lady Tianhai, in the form that General Old Iron watched over, died because she took on a human form. And she obviously changed into the kind of cranefish form that Aang meets at the end of the rift. But very clearly here is a spirit choosing to take on a human form where she would experience a death. So that is obviously the 3rd answer to this question, in addition to the fact that Tui and La were both fish that were able to be killed. So question 5 is kind of the counterpart to this, the reverse. Name 2 humans who became spirits. Past avatars do not count. Reflecting on this question, I probably should have made the number to answer for this 3 or 4. Just because I think in reflection, I wasn't thinking too hard about this question, realizing, I suppose, how obvious at least 2 of the answers were. I pretty much for sure should have made this 3 or 4 to make it a bit harder, but that's my mistake, not anyone else's. I think everyone pretty much got full marks in this question. I don't remember exactly, but there are actually 5 answers to this question. So, the Painted Lady, Yue, Iroh, Hundun, and the Kimura Kage. I think the only other answer that I got from someone else that I didn't consider to be a valid answer was Zhao. Now, specifically with Zhao, the reason I don't consider him an answer to this question is because, yes, he is a spirit separated from his physical body, but because he spends all his time in the Fog of Lost Souls, I'm assuming that there is some sort of an aspect of being trapped in there. He's basically in spirit prison that prevents him from ever truly changing from just a human spirit into an actual spirit. And I think that's the point, the kind of caveat to this question, is that there is that kind of change. So the Painted Lady is confirmed. It's actually from, I think, the episode commentary on A New Spiritual Age. It's when Mike and Brian get to the point where they're talking about Iroh becoming a spirit. They reference that the Painted Lady is also a similar case where she was a human, and she chose to leave her body behind and, become a spirit, and over time she's actually become a spirit. So she's an example of that. Yue, we directly see, of course, go from being human to becoming the moon spirit. Iroh, we see this is confirmed as well. He's been alive a long time, even after his death, by being in the spirit world. Hundun, we'll get to the two more complicated parts of the answer here. So Hundun is the main villain from the Korra video game, the console version. I think there's a DS version, but I don't think basically anyone has played it. So the explanation I have here: Hundun and his conjoined brother fight a previous avatar. His brother is killed and Hundun badly injured. He escapes into the spirit world to survive, leaving their bodies behind. He is in the spirit world for well over 500 years, since the avatar he fought had to be pre-Yang Chen. That, combined with his unique chaotic attack ability that we see in the game, shows that he becomes a spirit, because he's trapped in the spirit world until the spirit portal is open in between Korra Book 2 and 3, where the game is set. The game is so vague about the details and all of this stuff, like the fact that they don't confirm the avatar that he fought, they don't confirm a lot of details about him, so it's all kind of vague terminology and stuff like that. But the fact that he has basically a form of like magic that's very different than any other skill we've seen before, the fact that he lives to be this old, you either have to say he suddenly becomes the oldest living human, completely countering Kyoshi, or you say he becomes a spirit. And I think the spirit thing feels much more likely, given what happened. So that's why Hundun I consider to be an answer to this question. I think a couple of people said him, but at least in my logic, that's why he is an answer, because as much as it's vague, too much of it points towards him being a spirit that it's kind of otherwise difficult to say. It's also added to the fact that Korra, of course, to ultimately defeat him in the end, does use the spirit bending technique to defeat him, so I think that's telling also. Next up, the Kimura Kage. So again, this is one of those lore things from Smoke and Shadow comics. So here's the explanation on these, as well as the panel where it's basically explained. The Kimura Kage started out as normal women. These women all had their children taken by a warlord named Toz. The women were all thought to have died from sadness after this. But in fact, they passed over into the spirit world and became the Kimura Kage spirits, who proceeded to haunt Toz and steal children from his camps. His regime soon fell apart, and soon after that, the first Fire Lord rose up and united the Fire Islands, bringing peace. After this, the Kimura Kage left the physical world, their goals complete. And we see in the dialogue there, she specifically says, "For centuries, my sisters and I haunted the warlords of Fire Islands for their crimes. We haunted them." And again, this is one of those things where, like, it's never like super specifically like stated that the women, the mothers of these children, like become spirits. That specific dialogue of they became spirits is never stated, but it is so heavily implied in the book that is exactly what happened, that it really is the only way to interpret it, because like her calling like the other Kimura Kage spirits sisters, I think really, really fits. So that's probably the rarest answer to that question. I think only one or two people actually gave that as an answer, but very cool piece of trivia there with that one. I think, going back actually to the answers to the spirits who became mortal question, I think someone gave the answer of Rava. And to give a reason for why I don't consider Rava to be this, is that, yes, Rava is suddenly part of this kind of situation where she is like combined with a human who is mortal, but I don't think any part of the technical explanation of the avatar points to that changing Rava to suddenly be mortal. Now, we know that Rava can be destroyed, but I don't think the fact that Rava can be destroyed is because of her connection to the avatar. She was ripped out of Korra and destroyed, so even without the connection, she could still be destroyed. Of course, never truly destroyed. She'll always reform, because that's the nature of Rava and Vatu. But to me, nothing says that Rava is suddenly more mortal, basically, than before, just because she's part of the Avatar. So that's why I don't consider that an answer to this question. So, question 6. The fire temple on Crescent Island has been destroyed twice. What is the key similarity between both times? The answer to this is basically Avatar Roku destroyed it both times. Once while he was alive, and the second channeling himself through Aang. This question, as well as the last question, the second part to the last question, I find it very interesting the way some people answered this, in that I felt that what I said before I got into the questions in the video with the questions made it fairly clear that, like, with these questions, the answers that you're giving are going to be these kind of learning opportunities, that you're going to learn something of note by giving answers to the question. So, like, the people who led with the idea that, like, it was an explosion both times, or, like, you know, something along those lines, where it was more of the situation rather than, to me, the most clear and unique fact that is, you know, obvious to both times, and that is that Roku did it. I just found that quite interesting, in terms of, like, what people sort of prioritized as being in their minds the most obvious one. So a few people actually lost marks on this question for not really mentioning that it was Roku both times. I gave marks to people who, like, said, like, an Avatar did it both times. But to me, like, the point of the question was more like that. Yeah, like, Roku did it both times. One of those times being after he died. As well as this, it was also meant to be about, in terms of the answer to this question, knowing if people had actually seen Escape from the Spirit World and knew about the first time it was destroyed. And I think most people who answered it were completely aware of that. So it was just in the answering of the question, I think people maybe overthought what I was going for here with this one, and thought it maybe can't be as simple as it's just Roku both times, when that's the unique thing about it. So that's that answer. Next up, question 7. In 104, The Warriors of Kyoshi, we meet a girl named Coco, who is part of the group of fangirls who follow Aang around. What is the significance of her name in relation to where she lives? Again, another fairly simple answer here. Coco was the name of Avatar Kyoshi's daughter, and the Coco Aang meets lives on Kyoshi Island. So she was basically named after the daughter of the person who founded Kyoshi Island. I think basically everyone got this question right. I think maybe one person didn't, I'm not sure. So then we go on to question 8. We have seen 4 different colors of dragon. What are these 4 colors? For each color, mention a dragon of that color, where a dragon of that color makes an appearance. So this was just there to basically say, don't just name me some colors, prove to me you know where they're from. So the answers are red, blue, white, and green. So let's go through them. So red, Roku's dragon Fang is red, Zuko's dragon Druk is red, and then one of Ran or Shaw is also red. One of the firebending masters is red. In terms of blue, Sozin's dragon is blue, as is one of Shaw or Ran. And what I find interesting on this one as well is that, as far as I'm concerned, nothing has ever been confirmed about which dragon is which. Is Ran red or is Shaw red, and so on. Nothing I could see pointed towards any fact that specifically stated which one was which. I understand the idea of, like, red or Ran, or so Ran must be the red one, but it's not actually confirmed. I didn't take marks off anyone for specifying which dragon was which. Once you mentioned the idea of, like, a red dragon and you knew where it was from, I gave you the answer, and I don't think anyone lost marks because of that confusion. But just, I thought it was interesting that it's kind of this knowledge that some people seem to think is out there, that Ran is red and Shaw is blue, when it's not actually confirmed which one is which. The white dragon is the dragon that teaches Wan the dancing dragon in Beginnings Part 1. But yeah, we'll move on to the green dragon. The green dragon is the more, I suppose, complicated part of the question, but I think most people got it. There was only maybe 1 or 2 people who didn't. Green dragon, we get to see a green dragon in the short story from the comic The Lost Adventures, and the specific story in The Lost Adventures is called Dragon Days. And Aang and Kuzan find this green dragon, and, you know, shenanigans happen, basically. So yeah, that's that from the comics. That was just a little obscure thing that, hey, there's some dragon information in one of the smaller comics. Question 9. Zahir using airbending to suck the air out of the Earth Queen's lungs was not the first appearance of this technique in the franchise. What character used it first? The answer to this, of course, is Afiko the Betrayer from the Avatar trading card game. As you can see there's a specific part of the game that specifically refers to a suffocating void and him doing that basic technique on earthbending people. So yeah, Afiko the Betrayer, I have a little bit more on him here. For more information on Afiko and the unique information from the Avatar TCG, check out the videos linked in the description. And there's another picture of Afiko. So I think I linked 2 videos in the description, one of which is all about the 4 completely new characters that are specific to the Avatar trading card game. And then another video is basically just other scattered information that the Avatar trading card game gives to us. Now, I know some of you will be like, but the wiki says Afiko is a non-canon character. This is where some people can definitely make the mistake of trusting everything that the wiki says. In terms of canon statements of like this thing is or is not canon, the wiki, there's no like substance behind that. If the wiki says something is non-canon, that is just them making that guess, basically. Them saying Afiko is canon is just them saying, we don't consider the trading card game canon. It's not that anything has ever been stated by like Mike O'Brien or anyone official that the trading card game isn't considered to be in continuity. So that's why I consider this to be a valid answer to the question, in that Afiko and the story of Afiko doesn't contradict anything, because his story, as well as the Gyatso stuff that's covered in the trading card game, is basically the only information that we have on events during the Air Nomad genocide, and that we actually get to see some of the fighting take place in the cards and information on it through the flavor text on some of these cards. So that's why you should check out the videos that I have on this. But yeah, this was probably the question that lost people the most marks in terms of just people not being aware of this, and it's one of the more obscure pieces of information from the Avatar universe, for sure, absolutely. But I think it always helps to get information from every source possible, and I think like I'm one of the few people online who really talks about the Avatar trading card game, and I think that's why a lot of people who got this answer correct are probably people who follow my channel super closely and have watched all those videos. And that I think that I put out the video about Afiko like about 2 or 3 years ago, and I think I did a more updated trading card game video like 2 years ago, but I bring it up every so often. But anyway, question 10. Name 4 characters who live to be over 100 years old. There's a couple of answers here. We've got Aang, Appa, Bumi, Sozin, Guru Patik, and Kyoshi. So I think some people were a little bit like, do Aang or Appa count, because they were frozen for most of that time? But you know, like their age is technically over 100. I wasn't gonna get you on the technicality of like, oh, he's biologically only this amount. He specifically says he's over 100, and they make jokes about it every so often. So Aang being 166 at death, Appa like living to be at least 115 as of where he is right now. Bumi the same, as far as we're aware, he's still alive. Sozin was 102 when he died. Guru Patik is 150 the last time we saw him, and then Kyoshi was 230 when she died. So that's that. As for the ages, Bumi, of course, we know he was friends with Aang when he was younger. You kind of move it on, and in 100 years, that's how old he is. The Sozin one is probably the most complicated one, in that, like, I think it's an interview Mike and Brian did. It was a interview with Avatar Spirit, actually, so they got technical with it, and I think Brian came back and actually gave them the exact dates that, like, okay, Sozin, like, it was something along the lines of, like, Sozin started the war at this age and ruled for this many years, and we know that he ruled right up until his death, so you add those two together and you get 102, so that's where that comes from. Patik is just like Patik. It's the 150 is just that, like, he specifically states he's a friend of Monkey Atso, a personal friend, so he knew him, which means he's over 100 anyway. And then the fact that Gyatso's older than Aang, that adds the extra time on. So there's that. And then Kyoshi is just a fact that everyone knows that she's 230. So that's interesting. Question 11. Name 5 sets of twins in the Avatar universe. One of these sets of twins is different than the rest. What makes them different? This surprisingly ended up being the question that lost a lot of people some points. So to me the answers are Eska Desna, Lo and Lee, Wei and Wing, Poi and Ping, and Hundun and his brother. And the different set of twins is Hundun and his brother, because they're conjoined twins, the only known conjoined characters in the Avatar universe. I had people give me answers like, oh, Eska and Desna is the different one because it's the only set of twins that's a guy and a girl. Or Poi and Ping are the unique one because they're a bender and a non-bender. And while I'm like, yeah, that's a difference, but like, really? They're more unique and interesting of a fact than that we have a conjoined set of twins. Now, ultimately, if you at all in anywhere in your answer, in mentioning like Hundun, mentioned that he was conjoined, I gave you the full marks for this question. If you left that out, you didn't get marks for the second half of this question. And I think that's what led a couple of people down, was actually not specifying the conjoined aspect of Hundun and his brother, either in mentioning that he was one of the twins or in what the difference is. So I think just within the idea and the spirit of the question, to me, it was so kind of, that's so much more interesting of an idea than especially the Eska and Desna one. It's just like they happen to be the only guy and girl set of twins, or like Poi and Ping are the only bender and non-bender. It's kind of like, okay, that's interesting enough, but like the question wasn't really about gender, the question wasn't really about bender or non-bender, it was about twins specifically, and the only like unique twin thing really is the conjoined aspect. So that's why I put them here. Now, a few people brought up like Ty Lee being like a, septuplet, because she has 6 twins, so there's 7 of them. The fact that I specified twins to me is like we're focusing on 2, so you specifying 2 out of the 7, I didn't really treat as being correct. It's a cool fact that you have that, but I was going specifically for the 5 sets of twins that we do know about, so that's that. So next we have here, going into the results. So quick notes beforehand. So the max score is 11 out of 11. There was no real bonus points or anything like that. There was no negative marking. So if you gave me like 12 answers to the last name question, but like 2 of the extra ones you gave me were wrong or something like that, I didn't take off marks for that. There was only positives being given if you got something right. Partial scores were given when applicable. So in like a question where you were asked to name 3, if you only got 2 of the 3, you did get like 0.6666 instead of getting a 0 because you didn't get all of it. And that's why you'll see with the results here why there's so many like decimal scores, because I did go into that for a lot of questions, that if you got any aspect of the answer right, I was willing to give you at least some marks for getting it somewhat correct. So let's go into it. So here is the kind of bottom section of the list in terms of how people did. So you can see here the lowest score is actually 7.7, which is a good bit over like half of the score for this. And given that it was a fairly tricky trivia, the fact that everyone who entered got over 7, over 7.5, that's a pretty like notable thing for me, that no one did terribly in this. So there is a 14 to 8 on the list, and you can see at number 9 there was a tie with the 9.67 scoring. And yeah, you can see it just kind of gradually goes up there. Some pretty close ones of like 7.7 to 7.67, 8.1, 8.7, 9.3, 9.6, 9.75, and so on. So that's how the lower section of the table is. Going into the top half of the table, here we go. So 7, 10, 10.067, 10.4, 5, 6, 10.9, and then the winners tied with perfect scores, 11 out of 11 each. We have Lei and Yuto. So here we go. Yeah, the winners of the first Airspeed's Avatar Trivia Challenge are Lei Solomon and Yuto Martin, both with perfect 11 out of 11 scores. So, yeah, I initially said there was not going to be any prize or anything like that, but the winners do actually get something. Both winners may choose, if they want to, a topic to be covered in an upcoming Avatar discussion video. And if either of you want that, just email me. You have the email avataronlinepodcast@gmail.com, where you sent in your trivia answers to. So just email me and send me the topic that you want to cover, and maybe we can discuss specific things you want mentioned in the video, and I'll do those videos at some point. Final thing to say, last but not least, yes, there will be more trivia challenges like this. You'll note I gave it a number 1 at the start, like edition number 1. I can't say just yet when the next one will be, because good questions take a long time to come up with. Just keep an eye on the channel and you'll know when the next one is coming up. But yeah, thanks for participating in the trivia. Congratulations to everyone for getting pretty good scores, and especially the winners for getting perfect scores. But yeah, that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.